The mansion stood silent against the dark October sky, its windows glowing like golden squares in the night. Joan Washington pulled her cleaning cart from the service van, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. She had been cleaning the Romano estate for 6 months now, always arriving at 10 p.m. when the billionaire was either out at business dinners or locked away in his study. Tonight felt different. The usual lights in Pius Romano's study were off, and his luxury cars sat in the driveway like sleeping giants. Joan checked her phone. Tuesday night. He should have been at his weekly board meeting. The front door opened easily with her key card. Joan pushed her cart through the marble hallway, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows on the walls lined with expensive paintings. She had grown used to the overwhelming wealth that surrounded her during these quiet hours. Joan started with the ground floor as always, methodically cleaning each room. The kitchen sparkled under her care, every surface gleaming. She moved through the dining room, living room, and library with practiced efficiency. But something nagged at her. The house felt too quiet, too still. When she reached the second floor, Joan heard something that made her freeze. A sound so broken, so raw that it sent chills down her spine. Someone was crying. Not just crying, but sobbing with the kind of pain that comes from deep inside a person's soul. Joan's heart raced. Should she leave? Call someone? The sounds were coming from the master suite at the end of the hallway. She had never cleaned that area. Mr. Romano had specifically told the cleaning service that his bedroom and bathroom were off limits. But the crying continued, and something in Joan's spirit would not let her walk away. Her mother Grace had raised her to help people in pain, no matter who they were or what they owned. Joan set down her cleaning supplies and walked slowly toward the master suite. The bedroom door stood open, revealing a massive space with dark furniture and heavy curtains. But the crying was coming from beyond that, from what must be the bathroom. Joan could see light spilling from a doorway. "Mr. Romano?" she called softly. The crying stopped abruptly. "Sir, it's Joan from the cleaning service. Are you okay?" Silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then a voice, barely recognizable as the confident businessman she had occasionally seen from a distance, spoke. "Please, just go. I'm fine." But Joan knew that voice. It was the same voice she had used when her husband died 5 years ago, when she told everyone she was fine while falling apart inside. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the bathroom. What she saw there would stay with her forever. Pius Romano, the man worth billions of dollars, sat crumpled on the white marble floor like a broken child. His usually perfect hair hung in his face, his expensive shirt was wrinkled and stained with tears. In one hand he clutched what looked like a pregnancy test. In the other, a wedding ring caught the bathroom lights. "Oh, honey," Joan whispered, and in that moment she forgot about wealth and social differences and job boundaries. She saw only a human being in terrible pain. Pius looked up at her with red eyes, and Joan saw something she had never expected to see in the face of one of the most powerful men in the city. Complete and utter devastation. "I found it," he said, his voice breaking. "I was finally cleaning out her things and I found the pregnancy test. She never told me. She was going to tell me the night she died." Joan felt tears spring to her own eyes. She had heard about the accident 3 years ago, about how Pius Romano's wife had died in a car crash. But she had never known there was more to the story. Without thinking about consequences or social barriers, Joan sat down on the cold marble floor beside him. "Tell me about her," she said simply. And something in Pius Romano, something that had been locked away for 3 years, finally broke open. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to discover someone's deepest pain when you least expect it? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to hear how this story unfolds. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen between the most unlikely people. Pius stared at the pregnancy test in his trembling hand, as if seeing it for the first time all over again. The little pink lines seemed to glow under the bathroom's bright lights, marking a future that would never come to pass. "Her name was Isabella," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "We had been married for 2 years. She was everything good in this world. Kind, funny, patient with my long work hours. She always said she wanted to fill this big house with children and laughter." Joan listened quietly, her heart breaking for this man who seemed so different from the composed businessman she had glimpsed in passing. Here, sitting on his bathroom floor, he was just a husband who had lost everything that mattered. "That night," Pius continued, "she had asked me to come home early for dinner. Said she had something important to tell me. But I had a merger to close, a deal worth hundreds of millions. I told her I would be late, that we could talk the next day." His hands shook as he set the pregnancy test carefully on the floor between them. She was driving to her sister's house. Isabella always went there when she was upset with me. The roads were icy and a truck ran a red light. The police said she died instantly. Joan closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his pain. She had lost her husband Tony in a construction accident, but she could not imagine carrying the added burden of regret that Pius carried. "I never knew about the baby," Pius whispered. "She must have taken this test that day, maybe that morning. She was probably so excited to tell me, and I chose money over her. I chose business over the woman who loved me and the child we created together." "No," Joan said firmly, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "You did not choose anything. You were working, providing for your family. You could not have known what would happen." Pius looked at her with hollow eyes. "Could I not? I knew Isabella. I knew she only asked me to come home early when something important was happening. Her birthday, our anniversary, times when she needed me. And I still chose the office." Joan shifted on the cold floor, thinking about her own losses. "When my husband Tony died, I blamed myself for months. I kept thinking about the morning he left for work. We had argued about money, about whether Terence could go on the school trip he wanted. Tony left angry with me, and those were our last words." Pius turned to look at her fully for the first time. "What happened to him?" "Construction accident. A beam fell the wrong way. The foreman said if Tony had been standing 2 feet in either direction, he would have walked away without a scratch." Joan's voice stayed steady, though the memory still hurt. "For the longest time I thought if we had not fought that morning, maybe he would have been more careful. Maybe he would have been standing somewhere else." "How did you stop blaming yourself?" Joan was quiet for a moment, remembering the long nights when guilt had eaten at her like acid. "My mother told me something that finally got through to me. She said that love is not about being perfect. Love is about trying your best with what you know at the time. Tony knew I loved him even when we argued. And Isabella knew you loved her, even when work got in the way." Pius picked up the wedding ring he had been holding, turning it over in his palm. "I have not taken this off since the day she died. People keep telling me I should move on, start dating again. They say Isabella would want me to be happy. What do you think Isabella would want?" "I think," Pius said slowly, "she would want me to stop punishing myself. She used to get so frustrated when I would beat myself up over small mistakes. She would say that guilt was just pride in disguise, that I was not powerful enough to control everything that happened in the world." Joan smiled softly. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. She was also stubborn and terrible at cooking, and she laughed too loud at movies. She left her shoes everywhere and never remembered to turn off lights when she left her room. Pius's voice grew warmer as he talked about his wife. "She was real, you know? Not perfect, just real and good and mine." "Tell me more about her," Joan said, settling more comfortably on the floor. "What did she love to do?" For the next hour, Pius talked about Isabella. He told Joan about their first date at a small Italian restaurant where Isabella had spilled marinara sauce on her white dress and laughed instead of being embarrassed. He described how she would dance around the kitchen while making breakfast, how she adopted stray cats despite being allergic to them, how she cried during every movie ending, even the happy ones. Joan found herself laughing at some of the stories, and she noticed that Pius's face had changed as he talked. The heavy grief was still there, but underneath it, she could see traces of the man he used to be. "You loved her very much," Joan said when he paused. "I did. I still do. That is what makes this so hard. People say I should let her go, but how do you let go of the best part of yourself?" Joan thought about that question. "Maybe you do not let her go. Maybe you carry her with you in a different way. When Tony died, I thought I had to forget him to stop hurting. But my mother helped me understand that the love does not have to die just because the person is gone." Pius looked at the pregnancy test again, then at his wedding ring. "I have been so angry. At God, at myself, at the drunk driver who hit her. I have been angry for 3 years and I am tired of it." "Anger is easier than sadness sometimes," Joan said gently. "But it is like drinking poison and hoping someone else gets sick." As they sat together on the bathroom floor, two people from completely different worlds united by loss and pain, something shifted in the air between them. Not romance, not attraction, but something deeper. Understanding. Recognition. Hope. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, its deep notes echoing through the mansion. Joan realized she had been sitting on the bathroom floor for over an hour, but she made no move to leave. Pius had grown quiet again, though the desperate sobbing had stopped. "Mr. Romano," Joan said gently, "when was the last time you ate something?" Pius looked at her with confusion, as if the question did not make sense. I do not remember. This morning maybe." Joan's motherly instincts kicked in immediately. That is not good for you. You need to take care of yourself, especially when you are dealing with grief. Why do you care? The question was not rude, just genuinely curious. You barely know me. I am just your employer. Joan considered her answer carefully. Because pain is pain no matter who is feeling it. Because my mama raised me to help people when they are hurting. And because I have been where you are, and I know how dark that place can be. Pius studied her face in the bathroom's bright light. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? I do not know. Someone who would see a rich man crying and either run away or try to take advantage somehow. Not someone who would sit on a cold floor and listen to a stranger's broken heart. Joan smiled sadly. Money does not make pain hurt less. I learned that when Tony died. We were poor, but the grief was the same as what you are feeling. Loss is loss. Tell me about your life, Pius said suddenly. I have been talking about myself for an hour. What about you? What about your family? Joan shifted position, her back starting to ache from sitting on the hard marble. I have a son, Terrence. He is 16, smart as a whip. Wants to study engineering in college. And I take care of my mother, Grace. She has diabetes and her health is not great. Where do you work besides here? I clean office buildings downtown 3 nights a week and I work at a diner on weekends. Between the 3 jobs, I manage to pay the bills. Joan said this matter-of-factly without self-pity. Pius was quiet for a long moment. That must be exhausting. It is what it is. Terrence is worth every tired moment. And Mama sacrificed a lot to raise me after my father left. Taking care of her now is the least I can do. You are working yourself to death for your family. Joan shrugged. Love makes you do things that seem impossible. I bet you understand that. Pius nodded slowly. Isabella used to say I worked too much, but she also knew I did it because I wanted to give her everything. The irony is that all she really wanted was my time. Maybe you can honor her memory by giving time to someone else who needs it, Joan suggested carefully. What do you mean? Joan hesitated, then decided to be direct. You have resources that could help people. Maybe that could be a way to heal, to make something good come from all this pain. Pius looked at her with new interest. You are suggesting I should give away money. I am suggesting you should give away kindness. Money is just one way to do that. They fell into comfortable silence again. Joan noticed that Pius looked exhausted, his face pale and drawn. She also noticed that despite his wealth, he seemed deeply lonely. The mansion was beautiful but cold, more like a museum than a home. Mr. Romano, may I ask you something personal? After tonight, I think you have earned the right. And please call me Pius. Do you have friends? Family? People who check on you? Pius's laugh was bitter. I have business associates and social acquaintances. People who want things from me. Isabella was my best friend, and when she died, I lost my whole social world. Most of our friends were couples, and a grieving widower makes people uncomfortable at dinner parties. Joan's heart ached for him. That must be very lonely. It is. But I thought I deserved to be alone. I thought it was my punishment for not being there when Isabella needed me. Pius, Joan said, using his first name for the first time, can I tell you something my mother taught me about guilt? He nodded. She said guilt is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it does not get you anywhere. Isabella is gone, and nothing you do now will change that. But you are still here, still alive. What you do with that life, that is your choice. Pius was quiet for a long time, turning his wedding ring around and around on his finger. What if I do not know how to live without her anymore? Then you learn. One day at a time, one choice at a time. And maybe you do not have to do it alone. What are you saying? Joan took a deep breath. I am saying that maybe we could help each other. You need someone who sees you as a person, not a bank account. I could use a friend who understands what loss feels like. Pius stared at her. You would want to be friends with me? After seeing me like this? Especially after seeing you like this. This is the real you, Pius. Not the businessman in the expensive suits, but the man who loved his wife enough to keep her memory alive for 3 years. That is the person I would like to know better. For the first time since Joan had found him, Pius smiled. It was small and sad, but it was real. I would like that too. But I want to do something for you first. You do not need to. Yes, I do. You said love makes you do impossible things. Well, I want to make something possible for you. Your son's college education, your mother's medical care. Let me help. Joan started to protest, but Pius held up his hand. Please. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I have not done anything meaningful with it since Isabella died. This would not be charity. This would be friendship. Joan felt tears spring to her eyes. Pius, that is too much. It is not enough. Not for what you have given me tonight. You sat with me in my darkest moment and reminded me that I am still human. Let me return the favor. Looking into his earnest face, Joan realized that accepting his help would heal something in him too. Sometimes the greatest kindness was allowing someone else to be kind. Okay, she said simply. Thank you. As they finally stood up from the bathroom floor, both of them stiff and tired, Joan realized that something beautiful had been born in that cold, marble space. Not romance but something just as powerful. Oh. The next morning, Joan sat across from Pius in his vast kitchen, feeling somewhat surreal. Instead of cleaning his house, she was drinking coffee from china cups that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, making the granite countertops sparkle. Pius looked different in the daylight. Still sad but more composed. He had showered and changed into casual clothes, though Joan noticed he still wore his wedding ring. The man who had sobbed on his bathroom floor seemed almost like a different person, but Joan could see the pain still lingering in his eyes. I did not sleep much last night, Pius admitted, refilling her coffee cup. I kept thinking about our conversation. I hope that was not a bad thing. No, it was good. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I might have a purpose again. He sat back down across from her. Tell me more about your situation. I want to understand exactly how I can help. Joan felt uncomfortable talking about money, but she could see that Pius genuinely wanted to know. Well, Terrence is a junior in high school. He has grades good enough for any college, but we cannot afford the good schools. Community college is about all I can manage, and even that would be a stretch. What does he want to study? Engineering. He is fascinated by how things work, always has been. When he was little, he would take apart every toy and electronic device in the house, just to see the pieces inside. Joan smiled at the memory. He wants to design bridges, maybe work on big construction projects. Pius nodded thoughtfully. Engineering is a good field. Stable, well-paying. Where does he want to go to school? In his dreams? MIT or Stanford? In reality? Wherever will take him with financial aid. What about your mother? Joan's expression grew more serious. Mama has diabetes and it is getting worse. She needs regular doctor visits, medication, sometimes hospital stays. I have insurance through one of my jobs, but it does not cover everything. The copays and deductibles are killing me. How much do you spend on medical bills? Some months, almost half my income. I have been putting off some of her treatments because I cannot afford them all at once. Pius was quiet for a moment, and Joan worried she had shared too much. But when he looked up, his face was determined. Here is what I want to do, he said. First, Terrence's education. I will set up a college fund that covers tuition, room and board, books, everything at any school that accepts him. I will also hire a college counselor to help him with applications and make sure he gets into the best possible program. Joan's mouth fell open. Pius, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It could be. So what? I cannot accept that much money. It is too much. Joan, listen to me. I spend more than that on cars I never drive. Last year, I bought a painting for my office that cost twice what you were talking about, and I barely look at it. This money would actually mean something. Joan struggled with the offer. Her pride told her to refuse, but her heart thought about Terrence's face when he talked about his college dreams. What would you want in return? Nothing. This is not a business deal. This is friendship. But. No buts. Joan, you gave me something last night that money cannot buy. You gave me hope. You reminded me that there is still good in the world. Let me give something back. Joan felt tears forming in her eyes. What about Mama's medical bills? All covered. I will set up an account with her doctors and the hospital. Whatever she needs, whenever she needs it. No more choosing between treatments because of money. Pius, this is life-changing money you are talking about. Good. Lives should be changed when people are suffering unnecessarily. Pius leaned forward. Joan, I have been sitting on this wealth for 3 years, doing nothing useful with it. Isabella always wanted me to be more generous, to use our blessings to help others. This feels like something she would approve of. Joan wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Are you sure about this? Really sure. I have never been more sure of anything. Will you let me do this? Joan thought about Terrence, about how his face lit up when he talked about engineering. She thought about her mother, about the treatments they had delayed, the medications they had skipped. She thought about working 3 jobs and falling asleep exhausted every night. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, and thank you. Pius smiled, the first genuine smile Joan had seen from him. Thank you for letting me help. You have no idea how good this feels. They spent the next 2 hours making plans. Pius called his financial advisor and had money transferred to accounts for Terrence's education and Grace's medical care. He insisted on also setting up a monthly allowance for Joan so she could quit her other jobs and focus on her family. But I like working, Joan protested. I do not want to just sit around doing nothing. You will not be doing nothing. You will be taking care of your family without exhausting yourself. And I was hoping. Pius hesitated. I was hoping you might have time to help me with something. What kind of something? I want to start a foundation. Something that helps families dealing with loss, especially families who cannot afford proper grief counseling or financial support during difficult times. I know how to make money, but I do not know how to give it away effectively. I could use someone with your heart and your understanding of what people really need. Joan stared at him. You want me to help run a charity? I want you to help me figure out how to make a difference. You understand both sides now, the need and the resources. You could be the bridge between them. The idea was overwhelming and exciting at the same time. I do not know anything about running a foundation. We will learn together. I have the money and the business skills. You have the compassion and the real-world experience. We could actually help people. Joan thought about all the families she knew who were struggling with loss and poverty, who were working multiple jobs just to survive. We could help people like us. Exactly like us. What do you say? Joan looked around the beautiful kitchen, thought about the conversation they had shared on the bathroom floor, and realized that sometimes life changed in the most unexpected ways. I say yes. Let us help people. Can you imagine having your entire life transformed by one act of kindness? What would you do if someone offered to change everything for your family? Subscribe and share your thoughts because this story is just getting started, and the best part is yet to come. 3 weeks later, Joan walked into Pius's home office for their morning meeting, still marveling at how much her life had changed. Terrence was now enrolled in SAT prep classes and working with a college counselor. Her mother Grace had started a new treatment program and was already feeling stronger. Joan herself had quit her other jobs and was discovering a passion for organizing that she never knew existed. Good morning, Pius said, looking up from his computer. He looked better than when she had first found him, though Joan could still see the sadness in his eyes. How did the hospital visit go yesterday? Mama is doing so much better. The new medication is working, and the doctor says her numbers have improved significantly. Joan set down her coffee and pulled out a notebook. She wants to thank you again. She keeps saying she wants to cook dinner for you. Pius smiled. I would like that. It has been a long time since I had a home-cooked meal. They had fallen into a comfortable routine. Every morning they met in his office to work on foundation plans. Joan had discovered she had a natural talent for understanding what people needed and figuring out how to provide it. Pius handled the legal and financial aspects while Joan focused on the programs and services. I have been thinking about our name, Joan said, opening her notebook. What do you think about the Isabella Foundation? Pius was quiet for a moment. You would want to name it after my wife? She brought us together, in a way. If you had not been grieving for her that night, we never would have met like this. And you said she always wanted you to be more generous. The Isabella Foundation, Pius repeated slowly. I like it. I think she would like it too. They spent the morning reviewing applications from families requesting help. Joan had developed a system for evaluating need and matching resources to specific situations. They had already helped 12 families with everything from funeral costs to temporary housing to grief counseling. Tell me about this application, Pius said, pointing to a folder. Joan picked it up. This is the Martinez family. The father died in a work accident 6 months ago, leaving behind a wife and 3 young children. The mother speaks limited English and has been struggling to navigate the insurance claims and benefits. She is about to lose their house. What do they need? Short-term, help with the mortgage payments and utility bills. Long-term, job training for the mother and childcare so she can work. The oldest child is 8, so she cannot leave them alone. Pius nodded. Approved. What else? The Johnson family. Elderly couple, the husband has Alzheimer's and the wife is his caregiver. They are running out of money for his medication and specialized care. Approved. They worked through 6 more applications, and Joan continued to be amazed by Pius's immediate generosity. He never hesitated, never questioned whether someone deserved help. Do you ever worry about people taking advantage? Joan asked during a break. Sometimes. But I would rather help 10 people who do not deserve it than miss one person who desperately needs it. Pius stretched in his chair. Besides, you are good at spotting the real cases. I trust your judgment. That afternoon they drove to meet Terrence at his new school. Joan still felt nervous in Pius's expensive car, but she was getting used to the luxury that now surrounded her life. Tell me again why you wanted to meet my son, Joan said as they pulled into the school parking lot. Because he is important to you, which makes him important to me. And because I want to understand what his dreams are, make sure we are supporting him in the right way. They found Terrence in the engineering lab, working on a project involving bridges and weight distribution. Joan watched proudly as her son explained his work, his face animated with enthusiasm. This is really impressive, Terrence, Pius said, examining the model bridge. Have you thought about summer internships? I know some engineering firms that offer programs for high school students. Terrence's eyes lit up. Really? That would be amazing. I will make some calls. It is important to get real-world experience along with the classroom learning. On the drive home, Joan noticed that Pius seemed more relaxed than usual. You are good with teenagers. Isabella and I talked about having children. I always wondered what kind of father I would have been. His voice grew sad. Terrence reminds me what we lost. But look what you are gaining. You are helping shape his future. That is a form of fatherhood too. That evening, Pius joined Joan and her family for dinner at their small apartment. Grace had insisted on cooking, despite Joan's protests about her health. Mr. Pius, Grace said, setting a plate of fried chicken in front of him, I do not know how to thank you for what you have done for our family. Please just call me Pius. And you do not need to thank me. Your daughter saved my life. How did she do that? Pius looked at Joan, who nodded encouragingly. I was in a very dark place when she found me. I had lost hope. Joan reminded me that there was still good in the world, still reasons to keep going. Grace studied Pius with the sharp eyes of a mother who had seen a lot of life. You were grieving. I still am. But Joan helped me understand that grief does not have to be the end of the story. Loss changes you, Grace said wisely. But it does not have to break you. Sometimes it makes you stronger, more compassionate. After dinner, Terrence showed Pius his college research, his plans for engineering school, his dreams of building structures that would last for generations. Joan watched the two of them together and felt something warm grow in her chest. Not romantic love, but something deeper. Family. Pius, she said as he was getting ready to leave, would you like to stay for game night? We usually play cards or board games on Friday evenings. I would not want to intrude. You would not be intruding. You would be joining family. Pius looked surprised by the word. Family? That is what you are now. Family is not just about blood. Family is about people who care for each other, who show up when it matters. They spent the evening playing card games and laughing together. Joan watched Pius gradually relax, his formal business manner giving way to something more natural and warm. Grace told embarrassing stories about Joan's childhood, and Terrence shared his latest engineering theories. When Pius finally left that night, Joan walked him to his car. Thank you, he said. I had forgotten what it felt like to be part of a family. You do not have to forget anymore. We are here now. As Joan watched him drive away, she realized that healing was not a destination but a journey. And sometimes the best journeys were taken with people who understood your pain and chose to walk beside you anyway. 2 months into their friendship and foundation work, Pius made a decision that surprised even himself. He asked Joan to help him go through Isabella's belongings, something he had been unable to do since her death. Are you sure about this? Joan asked as they stood outside the closed door of what had been Isabella's studio. You do not have to rush into anything. I have been avoiding this room for 3 years. Isabella was an artist and this was her space. I locked it up after the funeral and never went back in. Joan could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand shook slightly as he reached for the doorknob. What changed your mind? The foundation. I realized I have been living like a ghost in my own house. Isabella would be furious if she knew I had turned our home into a mausoleum. Pius opened the door and sunlight streamed into a room that had been dark for years. Dust particles danced in the air, and everything was exactly as Isabella had left it. Canvases leaned against the walls, some finished, some half completed. Paint brushes stood in glass jars, and tubes of paint were scattered across a work table. Oh, Pius, Joan breathed. These are beautiful. The paintings were vibrant and full of life. Landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces that seemed to capture emotion in color and form. Joan could see Isabella's personality in every brushstroke, bright and alive and hopeful. Pius walked slowly around the room, touching nothing. She was so talented. I always told her she should have an art show, try to sell her work. but she painted for joy, not money. Look at this one, Joan said, stopping in front of a painting of children playing in a park. You can almost hear them laughing. That was from our neighborhood. She used to sit on the bench and sketch the families, then come home and paint them from memory. Pius's voice was thick with emotion. She loved children. She would have been such a good mother. They spent the morning going through the studio slowly. Joan let Pius set the pace, offering support when he needed it and space when he needed that instead. Some paintings made him smile with memory. Others brought tears to his eyes. What do you want to do with these? Joan asked gently. I do not know. I cannot throw them away, but keeping them all locked up here does not seem right either. What would Isabella want? Pius considered the question. She would want people to see them, to enjoy them. She always said art was meant to be shared, not hidden away. Maybe we could donate some to hospitals or schools. Places where people could use some beauty and hope. That is perfect. Isabella always wanted to brighten people's days. Pius picked up a small painting of sunflowers. I want to keep this one. She painted it for our first anniversary. They worked together, sorting the paintings into groups. Some would be donated, others would go to Isabella's family, and a few special pieces would stay with Pius. The physical work of moving and organizing seemed to help Pius process his emotions. Joan, can I ask you something personal? Of course. How do you handle Terence growing up and leaving someday? Does it scare you knowing that the person you love most will build their own life? Joan paused in her wrapping of a small canvas. Every day. But I realized something after Tony died. Love is not about holding on. Love is about giving someone roots and wings. Roots so they know they are loved, wings so they can fly. Isabella and I talked about that with our future children. She said the goal was to raise them so well that they would not need us, but would still want us in their lives. That sounds like wisdom. They took a break for lunch, eating sandwiches in Isabella's studio surrounded by her art. Pius looked more peaceful than Joan had ever seen him. I want to tell you something, he said. This is the first time I have felt close to Isabella without feeling guilty about it. What do you mean? Before, when I thought about her, it always came with pain and regret. Today I feel like she is here with us, approving of what we are doing. Does that sound crazy? Not at all. I still feel Tony with me sometimes, especially when I am making decisions about Terence. I think the people we love leave part of themselves in our hearts. That afternoon, they visited Isabella's grave for the first time together. Pius had been several times alone, but always filled with anger and guilt. Today felt different. Hello, beautiful, he said softly, kneeling by the headstone. I brought someone I want you to meet. This is Joan, the friend I told you about. Joan felt a little awkward talking to a gravestone, but she could see it was important to Pius. Hello, Isabella. I wish I could have known you. From everything Pius tells me, you were a wonderful person. She was. And she would have loved you, Joan. You have the same kind heart she did. They sat quietly for a while, and Joan noticed that Pius seemed calmer here than he had been in months. The anger and bitterness were fading, replaced by something gentler. Isabella, I am sorry I stayed away so long. I was angry and I was scared. But Joan helped me understand that loving you does not mean staying broken. I think you would like what we are doing with the foundation. We are helping families like ours, people who are facing loss and need support. Joan wiped away tears as she listened to Pius talk to his wife. She could see the love between them, still strong, even death could not break it. I will always love you, Pius said finally. But I am ready to live again. I think that is what you would want for me. As they walked back to the car, Pius seemed lighter somehow. The guilt that had weighed him down for 3 years was finally beginning to lift. How do you feel? Joan asked. Like I can breathe again. Like Isabella and I said goodbye properly this time. She knows you love her, Pius. She has always known. That evening, Pius called Joan with an idea. I want to have an art show. Display Isabella's paintings and sell them to raise money for the foundation. She always wanted people to see her work, and this way her art can help other families dealing with loss. That sounds perfect. Isabella would be so proud. As Joan hung up the phone, she realized that sometimes healing meant letting go, and sometimes it meant holding on differently. Pius was learning to carry Isabella's love with him in a new way, one that allowed for hope and new connections without betraying the past. The Isabella Memorial Art Show was held on a warm spring evening in the ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel. Joan stood near the entrance, greeting guests and explaining the foundation's mission, still amazed at how comfortable she had become in these social situations. You look beautiful, Pius said, appearing at her elbow. Joan had chosen a simple navy dress for the occasion, and Pius had insisted on buying her new jewelry to go with it. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied, straightening his tie. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that made his eyes look almost silver. The ballroom was filled with Isabella's paintings, each one accompanied by a small card explaining the foundation's work. Guests moved through the space with wine glasses in hand, admiring the art and learning about families the foundation had helped. "Mr. Romano," a woman approached them, "I am Margaret Whitfield from the Arts Council. These paintings are extraordinary. Your wife was incredibly talented." "She was," Pius agreed. "And she would be thrilled to know her art is helping families in need." Joan watched as Pius talked easily with the guests, telling stories about Isabella and explaining their foundation work. He had changed so much from the broken man she had found on his bathroom floor 6 months ago. The sadness was still there, but it was gentler now, mixed with purpose and hope. "Joan Washington?" A younger woman approached her. "I am Rebecca Chin from the newspaper. Could I interview you about the foundation?" "Oh, I think you want to speak with Mr. Romano. He is the founder." "Actually, I am more interested in your perspective. People are talking about the partnership between you two, how you represent both sides of the economic divide." Joan glanced at Pius, who nodded encouragingly. She had become the public face of the foundation in many ways, the person who could speak from experience about what families actually needed. "The Isabella Foundation works because we understand both the resources and the need," Joan explained to the reporter. "Mr. Romano provides the financial backing and business expertise, while I bring the understanding of what it is like to struggle and what kind of help actually makes a difference." "How did you two meet?" Joan smiled. "I was his janitor. But friendship does not care about job titles or bank accounts. We connected over shared experiences with loss, and we discovered we both wanted to help other people facing similar challenges." The evening was a huge success. They raised over $500,000 for the foundation and sold nearly every one of Isabella's paintings. But more importantly, Joan could see that Pius felt proud of his wife's work being appreciated and put to good use. "She would have loved tonight," he said as they cleaned up after the last guests had left. "She was here in spirit. I could feel her presence in every painting." 2 weeks later, Joan received unexpected news that tested their growing friendship. Her mother Grace had been offered a chance to participate in an experimental treatment program for diabetes, but it required moving to a medical facility in another state for 6 months. "I do not know what to do," Joan told Pius as they sat in his garden. "This treatment could add years to Mama's life, but it means leaving everything here. Leaving you and the foundation work. Then there is no choice. Your mother's health comes first. But what about our work? We have so many families depending on us." Pius was quiet for a moment, watching the fountain in the center of his garden. "Joan, can I tell you something Isabella used to say?" "Of course. She said that love always finds a way. If our friendship and our work together are meant to continue, distance will not stop that. And if you need to focus completely on your mother right now, that is what you should do." Joan felt tears in her eyes. "I do not want to abandon you. You are not abandoning me. You are showing me what real love looks like. Family first, always." "What will you do about the foundation?" "I will keep it running. I have learned a lot from you about what people need. And maybe this is my chance to prove that I can carry on the work we started together. You will call me with updates? Let me help with decisions from a distance. Every week. We are partners, Joan. Partners support each other through everything." The night before Joan left for her mother's treatment, Pius threw a small dinner party at his house. Terence was there, along with some of the families they had helped through the foundation. Joan was amazed to see how Pius had grown as a host, making everyone feel welcome and comfortable. "I want to say something," Pius announced during dessert. 6 months ago I was a different person. I was angry, bitter, and I had given up on the idea that life could be good again. Joan changed that. She reminded me that healing is possible, that love does not end with death, and that we can honor the people we have lost by helping others. "Hear, hear," said Grace, raising her water glass. Despite her illness, she looked happier and more hopeful than she had in years. "Joan, you saved my life," Pius continued. "And now I get to watch you save your mother's life. That seems like perfect balance to me." "You saved my life too," Joan replied. "You gave my family security and hope. You gave me purpose beyond just survival. You showed me that friendship can cross any boundary." After the guests left, Joan and Pius sat on his back patio looking at the stars. "I am going to miss you," he said simply. "I am going to miss you too. But Mama is right. This is not goodbye. This is just see you later. Promise me something, Joan." What? Promise me that no matter what happens with your mother's treatment, you will remember that you have a family here. Terrence will need you when he starts college, but you will also have me. You will always have me. Joan reached over and squeezed his hand. I promise. And you promise me that you will keep moving forward. Keep healing. Keep helping people. Isabella would be so proud of the man you have become. I promise. As Joan prepared to leave the next morning, she realized that their friendship had become something rare and precious. It was not romantic love, but it was deep and real and lasting. They had found each other in their darkest moments and helped each other find the light again. Take care of yourself, Pius said as he hugged her goodbye. Take care of the foundation. Take care of your heart. And remember that healing is not a destination. It is a journey, and you are well on your way. As Joan watched the city disappear through the car window, she felt grateful for the unexpected turns her life had taken. Sometimes the most important relationships began in the most unlikely circumstances. Sometimes the people who changed your life were the ones you least expected to understand you. While Joan was away caring for her mother, Pius found himself facing criticism he had not anticipated. What started as whispered conversations at business meetings soon became more direct confrontations about his unusual friendship and foundation work. Pius, we need to talk, said Richard Blackwell, the chairman of Romano Industries' board of directors. They were sitting in the company's conference room after a quarterly meeting, and Pius could tell from Richard's tone that this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. What is on your mind, Richard? This foundation of yours. The board is concerned about the optics. What optics? We are helping families in need. That should be good public relations. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. It is not the charity work that concerns us. It is your partnership with that cleaning woman. Pius felt his jaw tighten. Joan Washington is the foundation's director and my friend. She is also one of the most capable and caring people I have ever met. I am sure she is lovely, but you have to understand how this looks. A billionaire and his former janitor running a charity together? People are talking, Pius. They are saying you are having some kind of breakdown, that you are being taken advantage of. By whom? Joan has never asked me for anything. Everything I have given her family, I offered freely. $500,000 in gifts, Pius. College tuition, medical bills, a monthly salary for a job that does not really exist. How does that look to shareholders? Pius stood up, his patience wearing thin. It looks like I am using my wealth to help people who deserve help. That is what money should be for. Listen, I understand you are still grieving Isabella. We all loved her. But this woman is not your wife and she is not your family. You need to maintain appropriate boundaries. Joan is more family to me than most of my blood relatives. She has been there for me in ways you cannot understand. Richard's expression grew harder. The board is prepared to take action if necessary. Your decision-making has become questionable. First this foundation, then the art show, now missing board meetings to visit this woman's family. People are starting to question your fitness to run this company. Pius felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Let me be very clear, Richard. My personal life and my charitable work are not subject to board approval. I own 51% of this company, which means I make the final decisions. You own 51%, but you depend on the board and your management team to actually run things. Push us too hard, and you might find yourself very isolated. The threat was clear, and Pius realized that his friendship with Joan was going to cost him more than he had anticipated. But as he looked at Richard's cold, calculating face, he also realized something else. He no longer cared what these people thought of him. Meanwhile, Joan was facing her own challenges at the medical facility where her mother was receiving treatment. The other families were friendly enough, but Joan could sense their confusion about her situation. So your boss just pays for all this? Asked Martha, another woman whose husband was in the experimental program. That seems too good to be true. Pius is not my boss anymore. He is my friend. But he was your boss when he started giving you money? Joan could hear the judgment in Martha's voice, the implication that there must be something inappropriate about her relationship with Pius. It is not like that. We became friends over shared experiences with loss. He wanted to help my family and I let him. Must be nice, Martha said with a bitter laugh. My husband is dying and I had to sell our house just to afford this treatment. But I guess I do not know any billionaires. Joan felt the sting of the words but tried to respond with kindness. I am sorry you are going through such a hard time. Maybe I could put you in touch with our foundation. We help families dealing with medical expenses. Your foundation? Oh, that is rich. So you went from cleaning his toilets to running his charity? That is quite a career move. Joan felt her face grow hot, but before she could respond, Grace spoke up from her hospital bed. "Excuse me, young lady," Grace said in the stern voice that had kept Joan in line as a child. "My daughter works harder than anyone I know. She earned everything she has, and she did not get where she is by being anything other than honest and kind. If you have a problem with how she lives her life, that says more about you than about her." Martha looked embarrassed and mumbled an apology before leaving the room. Grace turned to Joan with concern. "Baby, people have been saying things like that?" "Some people. I guess it does look strange from the outside." "Do you care what it looks like?" Joan thought about the question. "I care about Pius. I care about the foundation and the families we help. I care about you and Terrence. What strangers think." She shrugged. "I guess that does not matter as much as I thought it did." "Good. Because real friendship is rare, and you do not throw it away because of what other people think." That evening, Joan called Pius to check on the foundation's work. She could hear the strain in his voice immediately. "Is everything okay? You sound tired." "Just some business pressures. Nothing I cannot handle." "How is your mother doing?" "Better every day. The treatment is working." "But Pius, what kind of business pressures?" "The board thinks I am having a breakdown. They think you are taking advantage of me." Joan felt her heart sink. Maybe they are right. Maybe I should step back from the foundation work. "No. Joan, listen to me. These people have never cared about anything but money. They do not understand friendship or generosity or doing the right thing. Their opinion means nothing to me. But they could make trouble for you. Let them try. I have been running this company for 10 years. I know where all the bodies are buried. More importantly, I know what matters and what does not. Our friendship matters. Our work matters. Their small-minded gossip does not." "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything. Joan, you changed my life for the better. I will not let anyone make me feel ashamed of that." After they hung up, Joan felt a mix of gratitude and guilt. She was grateful for Pius's loyalty, but she hated that their friendship was causing him problems. She thought about Martha's bitter words, about the board's threats, about all the ways their unusual partnership challenged people's expectations. But then she thought about the 12 families they had helped, about Terrence's bright future, about her mother's improving health. She thought about the broken man she had found on a bathroom floor and the confident, purposeful person he had become. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the whole world seemed to be watching and judging. Real friendship was one of those things. The next morning, Joan called Pius with a decision. "I want to come home early. Is your mother okay?" "She is doing great. But I think you need backup, and I think our foundation needs both of us fighting for it." "Joan, you do not have to." "Yes, I do. We are partners, remember? Partners do not let each other face the hard times alone." As Joan made arrangements to return home, she realized that their friendship was about to face its biggest test yet. But she also realized that she was ready for the fight. Some relationships were worth defending no matter what it cost. Joan returned home 2 weeks earlier than planned to find Pius in the middle of a full-scale battle with his board of directors. The situation had escalated beyond simple disapproval into what could only be described as corporate warfare. "They filed a motion questioning my competency," Pius told her as they sat in his study, surrounded by legal documents. "They are claiming that my erratic behavior and questionable financial decisions make me unfit to lead the company." Joan felt sick to her stomach. "This is my fault. If I had not—" "Stop right there. This is not your fault. This is about small-minded people who cannot understand that there are more important things in life than quarterly profits." "What exactly are they claiming?" Pius handed her a thick legal document. "They are saying that giving money to your family was a sign of diminished capacity. They are saying the foundation is a vanity project that proves I am not focused on business. They even hired a private investigator to try to find evidence of improper conduct between us." Joan's cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. What did they find? Nothing, because there is nothing to find. But the fact that they looked. Pius's voice was tight with fury. "I have known some of these people for 20 years. I thought they were friends. What happens now? Now I have to decide whether to fight them or give them what they want." "What do they want?" "For me to step back from active management, dissolve the foundation, and cut ties with you completely. In exchange, they will drop the competency challenge and let me keep my ownership stake." Joan felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "Maybe you should take the deal." Pius stared at her. "What?" "Pius, this company is your life's work. You built it from nothing. I cannot be the reason you lose everything. You are not the reason for anything. They are the ones creating this problem. But I could solve it by walking away. Pius stood up abruptly, beginning to pace around the room. Is that what you want? To walk away? I want what is best for you. Then stay. Fight with me. Help me build something better than what we are losing. Joan looked at the legal documents, at the years of work and success they represented. You could lose millions of dollars. I could lose something much more valuable. I could lose the best friend I have ever had and the most meaningful work I have ever done. Pius. Joan, let me tell you something. When Isabella died, I thought my life was over. I had money, I had success, I had a company worth billions of dollars. But I did not have purpose. I did not have joy. I did not have hope. You gave me all of those things back. The board is not wrong about one thing, Joan said quietly. I was your janitor. People are always going to see that first. So what? Some of the best people I know have worked jobs that others look down on. Isabella's father was a mechanic. My grandmother cleaned houses. Hard work is nothing to be ashamed of. But this is affecting your business relationships, your social standing. My social standing? Pius laughed bitterly. Joan, these people tolerated me because I was rich. They invited me to their parties because I could write big checks for their charities. They were never real friends. You are a real friend. Joan felt tears building in her eyes. I do not want you to sacrifice everything for me. I am not sacrificing anything. I am choosing what matters. There is a difference. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both lost in thought. Finally, Joan spoke. What would happen if you fight them and lose? Worst case scenario? They could force me out completely, tie up my assets in legal battles for years. I could lose control of the company. And if you win? I keep control, but I will probably lose most of my management team and board members. I would essentially have to rebuild the company from scratch. That is a big risk. Yes, it is. But Joan, I realized something while you were gone. I do not want to go back to the man I was before we became friends. I do not want to live in a world where money matters more than people, where business relationships matter more than real ones. Joan thought about her mother, about Terence, about all the families the foundation had helped. She thought about the man she had found crying on his bathroom floor and the strong, purposeful person sitting across from her now. If we fight this together, what would that look like? It would mean standing up in court and facing hostile questions about our friendship. It would mean having our relationship dissected by lawyers and reporters. It would mean dealing with people who will never understand what we have built together. And if we lose? If we lose, I will probably have to sell the company. But Joan, we could start over. We could focus completely on the foundation, maybe start our own business. We have proven we work well together. Joan looked at this man who was willing to risk everything he had built for their friendship and their shared mission to help others. She thought about all the advice her mother had given her over the years, and one phrase stood out. Baby, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Pius was showing her exactly who he was. Someone who valued people over profits, friendship over social status, doing right over doing easy. Okay, she said finally. Okay, what? Okay, let us fight. Let us show them that real friendship is stronger than their fear and greed. Pius's face broke into the biggest smile Joan had seen from him since the night of Isabella's art show. Are you sure? I am sure. We did not come this far just to give up when things get difficult. Besides, you were right about something. What? Isabella would want you to fight for what matters. She would want you to stand up for the people you love and the work that gives your life meaning. She would want me to stand up for us. Yes, she would. So let us give them a fight they will never forget. As they sat together making plans for the legal battle ahead, Joan realized that she had never been more certain about anything in her life. Some friendships were worth fighting for no matter what the cost. Some relationships were worth defending against the whole world. What would you do if you had to choose between security and friendship? Between fitting in and standing up for what is right? Subscribe and let us know in the comments, because this battle is about to get very intense, and you will not want to miss what happens next. The courtroom was packed with reporters, business associates, and curious onlookers. Joan sat beside Pius at the defendant's table, wearing a simple black suit that Pius had insisted on buying for her. She could feel the weight of dozens of stares, hear the whispered conversations about the janitor who had somehow convinced a billionaire to risk everything. Are you ready for this? Pius asked quietly. As ready as I will ever be. The competency hearing had been going on for 3 days. The board's lawyers had painted a picture of Pius as a grief-stricken man who had lost his judgment, manipulated by a clever woman who saw an opportunity to improve her circumstances. They had questioned every financial decision he had made since meeting Joan, every dollar spent on the foundation, every choice that deviated from pure business logic. Now it was time for Pius and Joan to tell their side of the story. Pius took the witness stand first, and Joan watched as he faced down the lawyers with calm dignity. They tried to rattle him, to make him seem unstable or irrational. But Pius answered every question with clear, thoughtful responses that revealed the man Joan knew him to be: intelligent, compassionate, and absolutely certain about what mattered to him. "Mr. Romano," the board's lead attorney said, "is it your testimony that you gave Mrs. Washington's family over $500,000 with no expectation of return?" "That is correct." "And you do not see that as financially irresponsible?" "I see it as the best investment I have ever made." "An investment in what, exactly?" Pius looked directly at Joan before answering. "An investment in friendship. An investment in doing the right thing. An investment in remembering what it means to be human." When it was Joan's turn to testify, she felt nervous but determined. She told her story simply and honestly: how she had found Pius in his darkest moment, how their friendship had developed, how the foundation had grown from their shared desire to help others. "Mrs. Washington," the attorney said, "did you not find it convenient that your employer offered to solve all your financial problems just as you were getting to know him?" "I found it surprising," Joan answered. "But I also found it consistent with the kind of person Pius is. He sees people in need and he helps them. That is not manipulation. That is kindness. Some might say you took advantage of a grieving man." Joan felt a flash of anger but kept her voice steady. "Some people might say that because some people cannot imagine friendship that crosses social and economic boundaries. But I know what taking advantage looks like, and I know what genuine caring looks like. What Pius and I have is real friendship, based on mutual respect and shared values." "And what do you say to people who think your relationship is inappropriate?" Joan looked out at the packed courtroom, at all the people who had come to judge her and Pius. "I say that the world needs more friendship, not less. I say that if helping each other and caring about each other is inappropriate, then maybe we need to change what we consider appropriate." The hearing concluded with closing arguments from both sides. The board's lawyers painted Pius as a man who had lost his way, led astray by grief and manipulation. Pius's attorney argued that his client had found his way, discovered what really mattered in life, and had every right to use his wealth as he saw fit. The judge retired to consider her decision, and Joan and Pius waited in a small conference room with their legal team. "Whatever happens," Pius said, "I want you to know that I do not regret any of it. Not a single dollar spent, not a single choice made. You saved my life, Joan. Nothing they say in there changes that. You saved mine too. And not just with money. You showed me that I was worth more than I thought I was." 2 hours later they were called back into the courtroom. Judge Martinez, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, began to read her decision. "This case has required me to consider fundamental questions about friendship, grief, and the responsibility that comes with wealth. The board of Romano Industries has asked me to find that Mr. Romano lacks the capacity to make sound financial decisions. They have presented evidence of large gifts to the Washington family and substantial spending on charitable activities." Joan held her breath. "However, the evidence also shows that Mr. Romano's business acumen remains sharp, that his company continues to be profitable under his leadership, and that his charitable activities are well organized and effective. More importantly, the evidence shows that Mr. Romano has found purpose and direction after a period of profound grief." The judge paused, looking directly at Pius and Joan. "Friendship is not a business transaction. Generosity is not a sign of incompetence. And choosing to help others is not evidence of diminished capacity. Mr. Romano has every right to use his wealth as he sees fit, and his choices reflect values that our society should encourage, not discourage." Joan felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. The motion to declare Mr. Romano incompetent is denied. This court finds no evidence that he lacks the capacity to manage his affairs or his business. The courtroom erupted in noise. Reporters rushed for the exits to file their stories. Board members looked stunned. Joan and Pius simply held each other, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. But the victory in court was only the beginning. As Pius had predicted, most of his board resigned in protest. Several major clients threatened to take their business elsewhere. The management team that had run his company for years walked out en masse. "Any regrets?" Joan asked as they stood in Pius's empty corporate office a week later. "None. But I will admit, rebuilding a company from scratch at my age is a little daunting." "Good thing you have help." Over the next 6 months, they rebuilt Romano Industries with a new philosophy and new leadership. They hired people who shared their values, who understood that business success should not come at the expense of human decency. The company was smaller now but more focused and more ethical. The Isabella Foundation grew into one of the most respected charities in the city, helping hundreds of families navigate loss and financial hardship. Joan became a sought-after speaker on grief counseling and community support, while Pius used his business expertise to help other entrepreneurs build socially responsible companies. Terrence thrived in college, studying engineering and volunteering with the foundation during his breaks. Grace's health continued to improve, and she became something of a grandmother figure to Pius, cooking for him regularly and offering advice whether he wanted it or not. On the first anniversary of the night Joan found Pius crying on his bathroom floor, they held a celebration at the foundation's new headquarters. Hundreds of people came, families they had helped, donors who supported their work, friends old and new. "I want to say something," Pius announced to the crowd. "A year ago I was a broken man who had given up on life. I thought success was measured in dollars and loss was the end of the story. Then I met someone who taught me that success is measured in lives touched and loss is just the beginning of a new chapter." Joan stood beside him, no longer the nervous janitor who had stumbled into a bathroom and found a crying billionaire. She was confident now, comfortable in her own skin, secure in the knowledge that friendship could conquer any obstacle. "Joan Washington did not just save my life," Pius continued. "She showed me how to live it. She taught me that the most valuable currency is not money, it is kindness. The most important investment is not in stocks or bonds, it is in people. And the greatest success is not in what you achieve for yourself, but in what you make possible for others." As the crowd applauded, Joan thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with pain and tears on a cold marble floor. It had included challenges that threatened to tear them apart. But it had led to something beautiful and lasting and true. "Thank you," Pius said, turning to face her directly. "Thank you for seeing past the money and the titles and the fancy house. Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you for seeing me too," Joan replied. "Thank you for showing me that friendship knows no boundaries and love always finds a way." As they stood together surrounded by family and friends, Joan realized that some stories do not end with romantic love. Some stories end with something even more powerful: the recognition that two people can save each other simply by showing up, by caring, by refusing to let each other face the world alone. The mansion was no longer cold and empty. Grace had moved into the guest wing, and Terrence came home for holidays and weekends. Joan had her own apartment in the city, but she spent most evenings at Pius's house, working on foundation business or simply enjoying the family they had created together. They had both lost their first loves to death, but they had found something different and equally precious in each other. They had found friendship that transcended every boundary society tried to put between them. They had found purpose in helping others find hope after loss. They had found that sometimes the most unlikely people make the best partners in life. And on quiet evenings when they sat in Isabella's former garden, now thriving under Grace's care, Joan sometimes felt the presence of the woman who had brought them together. Isabella's love had not died with her. It had expanded, creating space for new relationships and new possibilities. "Do you think she approves?" Pius asked one evening as they watched Terrence explain his latest engineering project to Grace. "I think she is proud of who you have become. I think she loves that her memory is helping other families. And I think she is happy that you are not alone anymore." "We are not alone anymore," Pius corrected. "None of us." As the sun set over their unconventional but deeply loving family, Joan knew that some of life's most beautiful stories begin in the darkest moments. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the person you least expect to understand your pain. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, saving someone else's life saves your own too.